It must be one of the most amazing flying stories of all time. One that is still hard to believe. An airliner full of passengers out of control at 17,000 feet. And the pilot is stuck outside the plane. In the cockpit, 3 frightened flight attendants are clinging to his legs. If he slips from their grasp, the captain's body could be sucked into the engine and bring down the plane. At the controls, a young co-pilot is battling to get the plane to the nearest airport.
Mayday! 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 London, England 5390!
The lives of 87 passengers and crew hang by a thread.
A lot of people go through life thinking it'll never happen to me. But you tend to go through life thinking it can.
I said I thought I was going to die, Mother. I thought we were going to die.
This bizarre accident tested the limits of human survival. And the investigation that followed not only exposed the mistakes behind it, but led to new ways of preventing them. For the crew of the British Airways flight from Birmingham, England to Malaga, Spain, the 10th of June began like any other day. Old friends about to do a job they loved.
Yeah, I'm quite hard to remember that though.
Yeah, but I'm not doing it whenever.
Stewards Nigel Ogden and Simon Rogers, along with stewardess Sue Prince, had worked together on and off for years.
Anyway.
They're an experienced, capable team that takes pride in its work.
At Birmingham, all the cabin crew and all the pilots, they all knew each other. We're all on first-name terms. Simon was a good friend of mine anyway, because we, just go out for a beer or a curry or whatever like that. Everybody was friendly to everybody else.
The one new member of the group was Alistair Atchison, an experienced co-pilot he'd just driven down from Manchester that morning.
Morning, Alistair. Come on in.
Tim Lancaster is captain. He's been a commercial pilot for 21 years.
Well, we've got to get started, eh?
Chief Steward John Heward arrives to give the crew their final briefing.
Morning, everyone. Right. Is that the first officer?
Yeah, just down from Manchester.
Nice seeing your face. OK. Malaga. Right, looking forward to this. Right, Nige, you can sit up with me up front and talk rugby. Sue, where would you like?
Over the wing?
OK, so, Simon, you're at the rear. All right, now, just a few safety questions. Nigel.
Before takeoff, the co-pilot performs a walk-around, checking the outside of the aircraft for anything wrong. In the cockpit, Captain Tim Lancaster reviews a log of the maintenance carried out on the plane the day before.
Everything okay?
Fine.
She's just come out of maintenance by the look of it. Nothing much though. Just changed the windscreen.
Many of the passengers know the flight well and are looking forward to a relaxed trip to Spain.
I was going to catch a plane from Birmingham to Malaga to meet my mum. My sister and I were joining her there for a week's holiday, a girls' week.
I live in the south of Spain, and 2 or 3 times a year I come back to see my grandchildren and also my mother. Everyone lives near Birmingham, so that's the route I normally take, Malaga, Birmingham.
These unsuspecting passengers and crew were about to begin an adventure of a lifetime.
Seem to have made yourself comfortable.
Too right.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking.
My name is Tim Lancaster. Welcome aboard this
British Airways flight to Malaga. Unfortunately,
He seemed laid back and quite jovial, really. Why, it's a lovely day in Malaga, blue skies, sunshine. Sit back and enjoy the flight.
Sunny, and we still expect to get you there on time.
Birmingham Tower, Speedbird 5390. We're ready to start and push.
Speedbird 5390. Clear to start and push. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to take you through our
Safety procedures and equipment. As this information is
For your benefit, we ask you to watch and listen carefully. Clear to start engines.
Starting number 2.
Emergency exits are on both sides.
The
of
stewardess and it shows you the emergency exit and all the emergency gear. And, of course, nobody's really watching. One chap was quite blasé, he was reading the Times, and people weren't really bothering because we've all been on flights and, you know, it's no big deal.
The air can be topped up by using the mouthpiece, and there is a whistle for attracting attention.
knots.
The BAC 111 was known as the Jeep of the skies, a workhorse that was easy to maintain and had a good safety record. At 43 tons, this pressurized hull is carrying 81 passengers and 6 crew, and is now climbing to 23,000 feet. In just over 2 hours, they should be in Spain. Only a catastrophic accident could bring this plane out of the skies.
Alistair, I can see my house from here.
2 minutes into the climb, the pilots switch on the autopilot. Tim Lancaster takes off his shoulder straps and relaxes into the flight.
Now I went into the flight deck to ask Tim and Alistair what they would like to drink.
You gentlemen like a tea?
Please, the usual.
Milk, 1 sugar, please.
And I said, your breakfast's on. It'll only be a few minutes.
Now, almost 13 minutes after takeoff, and at 17,300 feet, they're just 5,000 feet from their assigned altitude. But then, in a split second, everything changes. With a huge explosion, the captain's windscreen blows out into the sky. Almost immediately, a white fog forms.
A sort of really intense stomach, body-shaking thud.
We were just diving, really. And then we started to judder like this.
And I was a bit stunned. I thought, what? I thought, oh God, it's a bomb.
Alistair, the co-pilot, is suddenly fighting for control in a 350-mile-an-hour wind. There's no time to think about the captain, who's been blasted out of the window by pressurized air escaping from the aircraft. The rushing wind pins Captain Lancaster to the roof of the cockpit. Inside, his legs have jammed the control column forward, disconnecting the autopilot and pushing the plane down into a dive. Alistair Acheson needs all his flying experience now. He's on his own. The captain's body is pinned to the outside of the jet as it hurtles down from 17,000 feet. The throttles are jammed forward, increasing the speed to nearly 400 miles an hour. Co-pilot Alistair Acheson has to take command. While he fights to bring the plane under control, steward Nigel Ogden can see his captain is being sucked out of the aircraft.
And I looked in, the flight deck door was resting on the controls, and all I could see was Tim out the window. I jumped over, put one foot in the captain's footwell, and the other one was down the side of his seat. I just grabbed him before he went out completely.
Nigel Ogden holds on to the captain for dear life. Outside, a 390-mile-an-hour blast of wind at minus 17 degrees centigrade smashes into Tim Lancaster's body. The tornado in the cockpit is giving Acheson major problems. Air traffic control can hear his cries for help, but the storm rushing through the cockpit drowns out their replies. The captain's feet are still pushing against the control column, and Alistair is struggling to get full control of the plane. He's now diving through some of the busiest air lanes in the world, with the added danger of a mid-air collision. From the cabin, lead steward John Heward sees the chaos in the cockpit and does what he can to help.
I looked up, and there was Nigel sort of hanging across the seat in the flight deck. In front of me, the flight deck door had fallen forwards and trapped itself between the actual door frame and the throttles of the aircraft. So I literally stamped on it twice, and it literally broke into 3 or 4 pieces. Behind, on the wall of the flight deck, there is a spare seat for anybody to observe the flight or whatever. And I thought, well, if I put my arm through the seatbelt there, I can grab both of them, and at least we've got some sort of anchor point inside the aircraft.
Alistair, who's never flown with this crew before, has to leave them to their own devices and focus on getting the plane to safety. He now has control of the throttles. John and Nigel have wrenched the captain's feet away from the control column. But instead of slowing down, Atchison decides to continue the rapid descent. It will quickly take him out of the way of any other air traffic and take him to a lower altitude where oxygen equipment won't be needed. Staying too long at a high altitude risks oxygen starvation, and this older aircraft is not fully equipped with oxygen for all the passengers on board. The airspeed indicator goes into the red. In the cabin, the 2 other stewards, Sue Prince and Simon Rogers, are trying to prepare the passengers for what they hope will, at worst, be an emergency landing.
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday! Emergency depressurization on!
They've dived to 11,000 feet in just 2.5 minutes. But as they level out and slow down to 170 miles per hour, the captain's body is no longer pinned to the roof and slides round to the side of the plane.
Flight level 100. Radar heading 195.
Working his way from the back of the cabin, steward Simon Rogers now catches sight of the chaos in the cockpit for the first time.
Now the aircraft had got to sort of flying fairly level, Simon came up from the back. Nigel was beginning to get really sort of achy now with his arms, and I knew he wasn't going to let go unless he was sure that Tim wouldn't fly out of the window.
We all had fear in our eyes. We were all worried sick because we thought, you know, either Tim's going to die or we're going to die, you know. That was going through my mind. But it was up to Alistair then, and it was up to us 3, Simon and John and myself, to hold on to grim death.
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday!
All I remember is Tim's arms flailing out. His arms seemed about 6 foot long. And I'll never forget that. His eyes were wide open. I mean, his face was hitting the side of the side screen, but he didn't blink. And I thought to myself, and I said to John, I said, I think he's dead. I think he's dead. And I said, you and Sil have to hold on. I can't hold on anymore. I can't hold on anymore. I've lost the feeling in my arms.
We decided to put Simon. I said to Simon, you sit in that jump seat and fasten yourself in. With Simon sitting in the seat, we'd freed Tim's legs from between the control column and the seat. So we hooked his feet over the back of the captain's seat, and then Simon literally put his hands on the top, just so he was holding his ankles down.
Hey, look, what's going on? We're gonna be all right. But I think the captain's dead.
Well, I couldn't believe it, because he just told us what a lovely day it was. You know, blue skies, sunshine, relax and enjoy the flight. And then next minute, he's dead.
Simon and Alistair now face one of their most difficult decisions: what to do with the lifeless body of the captain. No words are said, but for a moment the thought passes between them that the best thing would simply be to let it go.
No! Can you hold on to it, please?
But Alistair's order isn't simply an act of compassion.
Releasing the body at the position it was in, it would have gone close to the upper area of the wing. It could have damaged the leading edge of the wing. Had it gone over the wing, it could very well have gone into the engine. Quite a lot of damage could have been caused by the release of the body. So I think it was a very sensible decision to try and keep him where he was.
Alistair has managed to get down to 11,000 feet. Without the captain to help, he's operating the plane's systems from memory and shepherding it around Heathrow, some of the most congested airspace in the world. 7 minutes out of contact with the ground, he's able to hear the voice of air traffic control for the first time.
Requesting radar assistance onto the nearest airfield, please.
Speedbird 5390, roger. Can you accept landing at Southampton?
Speedbird 5390, I am familiar with Gatwick. Would appreciate Gatwick.
Alistair wants to land at Gatwick Airport, as he's flown there many times before. But Southampton is nearer, and even though he's never flown there before, he knows he has to get down fast.
And I am on 150 knots. Requesting radar assistance into Southampton.
When you're going to an airport that you're not used to, you normally have charts, let-down plates, that kind of thing that you can read up on and learn something of the airport you're going to. But he knew nothing of Southampton. He hadn't been there. He had no charts because everything had gone out the window. There was no let-down plates to look at the approach and so on.
All the maps and charts blew out of the window with the captain, and only the air traffic controller can guide Acheson. He turns towards Southampton.
Southampton, this is Speedbird 5390. Do you read?
Speedbird 5390. Good morning.
Identified on handover from London radar 6 miles west of Southampton
Airfield. What is your passing level?
Roger, sir. I am not familiar with Southampton. Request you shepherd me onto the runway.
When he spoke, he was obviously stressed. It sounded as if he was under a fair bit of pressure.
What is your number of persons on board?
We have 84 passengers on board, and I think that will be all until we are on the ground.
Roger, that's copied. I've been advised it's pressurisation failure. Is that the only problem?
Negative. The captain is half out of the aeroplane, I understand. I believe he's dead.
Roger, that is copied.
My feeling was, when he told me what was going on, it was one of disbelief, because it doesn't actually happen. You know, it's one of these things that you see in films, that happens in films, but it doesn't happen in real life. And it was sort of the hairs in the back of the neck go up, and there's this feeling down the spine, the tingle down the spine, and you think, no, it's not for real, but it's got to be.
Flight attendant holding on to him, but request an emergency facility for the captain. I think he is dead.
Affirm. What is your passing level?
Leaving flight level 5,500 feet on 1019.
Roger, that's copied. I'll give you a little bit more space, then I'll turn you on to a heading of 180. Yeah, it's a full emergency. It's a 111.
Rundle contacts the emergency services at the first opportunity.
I don't know how many people are on board, but I'll let you know.
Could you confirm that the length of runway at Southampton is acceptable for a 111?
Yes, it is acceptable for a 111, and I'll give you the figures shortly.
As long as we have at least 2,500 metres, I am happy.
I'm afraid we don't have 2,500 metres.
Neither do Bournemouth. We have a maximum of 1,800 metres.
Atchison is concerned that the plane is above its maximum landing weight, being full of fuel for the journey to Malaga. And the BAC-111 can't dump fuel. If the runway isn't long enough, he faces more problems.
Whether the aircraft could actually stop on the runway, or whether the tyres would burst, or whether he would go off the end of the runway. That's obviously what he was worried about when asking for 2,200 metres.
5390, thank you very much. We are 3 greens and flaps 45, so we are set for approach, but make it please very gentle.
Yes, I will indeed. You are number 1 traffic.
If you think about it, all the airline pilot training is done with 2 pilots, both compass mentors in the cockpit, one flying the aeroplane and the other one doing all the emergency drills. So what you actually had was the captain hanging out the window, at least one person hanging onto his legs, and Alistair flying the aeroplane with nobody else to talk to.
Speedbird of 5390.
It's 9 miles from touchdown, you're clear to land. Wind indicates 020 degrees at 14 knots. Descend to height to 1540
feet. QFE is 1017.
Roger, sir, descending to 1,500 feet. Talk me down all the way. I need all the help I can get.
Roger, you'll be able to stop the aircraft
on the runway and evacuate the aircraft on the runway.
He must have been about 6 or 7 miles from touchdown. And obviously at that point I kept talking until he was happy he could see the runway and was happy to continue looking out the window and land the aeroplane. At the point he said he was visual with the runway, I effectively stopped talking.
not acknowledge unless requested. It will be an uninterrupted talk down, but feel free
to interrupt if you feel you need to.
5390, thank you very much. I have the runway in sight.
Thank you, you are clear to land. Do you wish me to continue with any further information?
Negative.
"32 minutes after takeoff, with 81 terrified passengers, a nearly full fuel tank, and the captain blasted out of the window, Alistair Atchison attempts the most difficult landing of his career. At 8:55 a.m., flight BA 5390 makes a perfect landing at Southampton Airport. Immediately, emergency vehicles surround the plane. Firefighters remove the body of the captain and lead the passengers and crew away.
I remember seeing the co-pilot, the man who really, if it wasn't for him, we'd have been on the other side by now, and is walking down the runway very slowly, shaking his head, and he got an ambulanceman walking with him with his arm around the shoulders of the co-pilot. And the co-pilot was shaking his head as if... I remember that distinctly. I don't know why, but I do.
Alistair Atchison has carried out a remarkable piece of flying, almost unprecedented in aviation history. He has had to pilot his plane without his captain, who has undergone physical stresses that nobody could have been expected to survive.
I think these extreme conditions, no one expects to occur in their lifetime. His survival time must have been measured in no more than tens of minutes as he became colder and colder and his body systems began to shut down.
Tim Lancaster's body was subjected to a two-pronged assault. The physical violence that his body suffered being blown out of the plane, and the extreme cold and lack of oxygen at 17,000 feet. Every 1,000 feet of altitude causes the temperature to drop by 2 degrees centigrade. So the temperature on the outside of the plane would have been around minus 17 degrees centigrade. The extreme wind chill also meant his body was losing heat very rapidly.
He would have lapsed into semi-consciousness and then unconsciousness, and as the temperature, his core body temperature fell, he would have finally died as a result of the excessive cold in that environment.
Despite the trauma that Captain Lancaster's body suffered, there was one final twist to his story.
You know, it's only once I've ever been here, and that was 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
In the Oxfordshire countryside, John Heward and Nigel Ogden are visiting one of their crew members who shared their horrific experiences.
Here he is.
Hi, guys. John, how are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, mate.
Nige. Oh. Come in. Hi.
Like on SCP, when you go in and you've got to pretend...
The captain of that fateful flight, Tim Lancaster, somehow survived his horrific ordeal. There were no fatalities on BA 5390.
Yeah, that's it now. You can go on the 3-day cruise across there.
As his frozen, lifeless body was removed from the plane, nobody thought that Tim could have survived such punishment. But remarkably, he was slowly beginning to emerge from his horrific adventure.
Tim, can you hear me?
I regained some consciousness on the ground at Southampton because I remember big red and white things, which were obviously fire engines and ambulances, not people and not conversation. And then my next clear, lucid thoughts are in hospital in Southampton. Over the next few days, all the bits eventually arrived back in my sort of consciousness, and I put the jigsaw together and, you know, sort of played the whole story for myself and understood what had happened. There was a big bang, a noise of all the air escaping, but I remember watching the windscreen move away from the aircraft, and then it had gone like a bullet. It disappeared into the distance. And I think there was an even bigger bang, or there was an even bigger bang. And I was very conscious of going upwards. And, well, the whole thing became completely surreal then, as it would. And I was aware of being outside of the airplane, but that really didn't bother me a great deal. What I remember most clearly is the fact I couldn't breathe because I was facing into the airflow. And I turned it round and actually turned my body round. I was sort of looking back along the top of the aircraft at that stage, and I could breathe then. And yes, I remember that. I can remember seeing the tail of the aircraft. I can remember the engines going round, and then I don't remember much more. Memory stopped at that point.
I went down there last year, but they've changed the airport totally now.
I'm glad I did hold on, because Tim was alive. I mean, he's a very strong man. He must have been, to survive that. I wouldn't have been able to survive it.
That's all very dramatic.
It is, look.
Tim Lancaster's survival was little short of miraculous. He'd been minutes away from death. It was Alistair Acheson's flying that saved his life. His quick thinking in getting the plane to the ground in only 22 minutes saved Lancaster from dying from the effects of exposure. And by pure chance, the physical trauma he suffered was limited. It included a bone fracture in his right arm and wrist, a broken left thumb, bruising, frostbite and shock. Remarkably, within 5 months, Tim Lancaster had made a full recovery and was flying again.
Speedbird 539.
Of course, the captain wasn't the only one to go through a horrific experience. Battling with the controls whilst a tornado raged through the cockpit was something no commercial pilot could be trained for.
If it goes comfortable at all, just let me know.
The few pilots who are able to understand the experience of Acheson and his crew include these young Royal Air Force trainees.
Officer Shapley, seat 7. Line of Subaltern, seat 3.
They are being put through a simulation of an explosive decompression in this hypobaric chamber. It duplicates the effects of a window blowing out at 25,000 feet.
Individual intercoms.
Checked and operated.
All connections.
Checked and firm.
Console checks are complete. Clear to claim instruction of the medical officer.
Climbing to 8,000 feet at 4,000 feet per minute.
The atmospheric pressure is initially set to 8,000 feet. This is the pressure inside the sealed cabin of most commercial aircraft. Anyone can survive this for many hours with no ill effects. Any higher than that, and the experience is very different.
Is enabled.
Students, listen in. Will all students please indicate with a clear thumbs up that they are ready for rapid decompression? 8 thumbs, rest your thumbs. Students, stand by for rapid decompression. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now.
The mist in the hyperbaric chamber is identical to the fog formed when the window blew out on BA 5390. At the instant of rapid decompression, the air in the cabin can no longer hold onto its water vapor, which is then released into the atmosphere as fog.
Chamber altitude is stable at 25,000 feet. High hold is enabled. Cross vent is on and you're clear to commence hypoxia training.
Good, well done. Good, we'll commence hypoxia training on students 7 and 8.
Once the fog clears, then the lack of oxygen at that height begins to tell.
Okay, let's put you out your misery. Start copying these shapes in the right-hand margin.
Without oxygen, at first we begin to see a reduction in their reaction speed, and we see personality changes, much like someone experiences when intoxicated with alcohol. So we see that some students become euphoric, some students become quite subdued, and some students begin to develop forgetfulness.
Have a look at the ugliness of your colleagues' faces, see if they get any prettier whilst you're becoming hypoxic, and carry on with the
We
task.
see increasingly impaired performance in our students. Thinking is slowed and their reaction speed becomes increasingly slowed until they begin to develop sort of lapses of concentration, falling into unconsciousness, and finally death if their oxygen supply is not re-established.
Indicating that the blood is no longer carrying as much oxygen as it was. This is all about you experiencing your personal symptoms and having others observe the symptoms in you.
Flying alone, battling nearly 400-mile-an-hour winds, and defeating the possibility of oxygen deprivation, Alistair Acheson's achievement in saving Flight 5390 was outstanding. Even as the crisis was unfolding, accident investigators were rushing to Southampton to find an explanation. On the ground at Southampton Airport, the search for clues begins. Initial investigation shows no distortion to the frame of the windscreen, so this rules out a problem with the structure. The fact that there are no shards of glass also discounts a bird strike. Stuart Culling, senior investigator with the Air Accident Investigation Branch, has little to go on.
Windscreen was missing, there was a certain amount of blood around, there were some minor dents and scrapes on the fuselage, as you'd expect if the window had gone past, and really that was about it, apart from a lot of paper scattered around inside.
One of his first clues comes from the log recovered from the plane. He knows the plane had been serviced just the day before, and that a windscreen had been replaced. He immediately pays a visit to the British Airways maintenance hangar at Birmingham.
I wanted to find out exactly what had happened to the aircraft before it took off. And I'd arranged that I should talk to the shift maintenance manager who fitted the window. There was a slight problem there because he'd been on night duty and consequently he had finished his shift at roughly the same time as the windscreen came out of the aircraft, and he wasn't in a fit state to be interviewed. He needed to get some sleep.
Stuart Culling.
Good morning. Nice to see you. I was expecting you.
Yes, good. Thank you very much. Is this the hangar in question?
This is the main hangar, yes.
Yes.
So in the meantime, I looked around the facility. I made sure that any paperwork and any records of the aircraft had been identified and taken away so they couldn't be accessed by anyone else, and waited until he came in.
Hello, I'm from the AIIB. Yes, and this is my colleague. What I'd like to do today is just find out what went on during that shift pattern and how it went. Thank you very much. Did you notice anything about the window itself, any stress marks that were worrying you?
My first conversation with the shift maintenance manager was relatively general, because at that stage we had no evidence that was relevant.
Yourself? You didn't delegate it to somebody else and then check
Stuart,
it?
there's a phone call for you. Just come in.
Oh, right. Would you mind if I took this and come back?
So I took the call and found that it was information about the windscreen which had been found near Didcot, and there were something like 30 bolts found with it, most of which were one size short in diameter, one size too small in diameter.
It was a crucial error. On some planes, windscreens are fitted from the inside and use the internal pressure inside the cabin to keep them in place. But on the 111, the windscreen is bolted on from the outside. Any weakness in the bolts could mean that the pressure inside the plane would blow the windscreen out. It appears Culling has very quickly found the mistake and the guilty man.
I've had some news which I think is very relevant. I've heard from my colleagues who are working on the bolts. They tell me they're the wrong bolts. They're the wrong diameter.
No, that's not possible. They're exactly the same bolts that I took out of there.
He's a professional man. He's very keen on doing things, to his mind, in the interest of the company. And he's suddenly told that he's put a windscreen in using bolts of the wrong size. And he's absolutely shocked.
I can show you. I'll show you the bolts I got out of there.
One thing that came out was that he said, oh, the old bolts went into a waste bin in the hangar where he did the job, and they may still be there. So we rushed across to the waste bin and found something like 80 discarded bolts.
Here. They'll be in here. This is where I put them. These are the bolts.
And these are the ones you checked against the new ones?
That's right, yeah. I took
from the carousel.
It was really excellent evidence. Gold, as far as I was concerned.
Well, I'll take these away.
Okay.
By comparing the maintenance manual to what the engineer had told him, Culling is quickly able to identify the first part of the sequence, what went wrong the previous night when the window of the BAC 111 had been replaced.
We went through the whole chain of events that had occurred, and we found that there were something like 13 different anomalies which led to the fitting of the bolts. And had any of these caused him to think, the sequence of events would not have continued and there wouldn't have been an accident.
The engineer had come early into his shift, and at about 4 a.m. had gone to work removing the old windscreen from the plane. The hangar was full, and the plane had been pushed against the hangar door, which made the windscreen hard to reach. Stretched across the fuselage, he had problems controlling his screwdriver. The windscreen that he had taken out had itself been fitted with the wrong length bolts, but they were still strong enough to hold the screen in, and it survived without a hitch for 4 years. But he was a conscientious engineer, and he decided that he would replace the old bolts with new ones when he installed the new screen. He chose not to go to the parts catalogue and look up the exact bolts he needed. Instead, he went straight to the parts store.
Good morning. Morning.
There, he matched by eye new bolts with the ones he had taken out of the screen. His eye match was good, and he found a few fresh bolts of exactly the same type in a drawer.
What I'm after is I need 97 Ds. I'm just doing a windscreen on a 111 over there, and I need some new bolts.
8 Ds on a 111?
Well, no, these are 7s. This is a 7. I've just taken it out.
We haven't got any 7s anyway.
OK. Right,
The store manager knew which bolts the engineer should have been looking for, but the engineer chose to ignore his advice. Instead, he drove to the other side of the airport to find a match for his bolts. It was now about 5:15 a.m., and in a dark corner of the hangar, he continued to search for new bolts identical to the ones he'd taken out of the plane. But in the gloom, his luck finally ran out. He thought they matched, but they didn't. He picked bolts that were just over 0.02 of an inch too narrow for the job. Returning to the 111, he stretched over the plane and began fitting these new bolts. Working at an angle, he couldn't see that the new bolts didn't fit correctly. Signing off at 6 a.m., the engineer had managed to get his work done in time. The plane was now ready to be handed over to Captain Lancaster and his crew. In fact, it was a disaster waiting to happen. The morning of the next day, the 111 was at 17,300 feet. The difference in pressure between the sealed hull of the jet and the thin atmosphere was climbing quickly to the half-ton per square foot it would reach at 35,000 feet. This pressure was looking for a weakness, and it found it. For Culling, finding out what had happened that night is only the first step. No one had hidden from him what they'd done, but he knows that he has to go deeper to understand the reasons behind this horrific sequence of events, why the engineer did what he did, and whether this was an isolated incident or the symptom of a bigger problem.
Accident investigation, certainly on aircraft, comprises 2 parts. The first part is what's happened, and that's usually relatively the easy bit. The second part is why did it happen?
Why did the engineer ignore procedure, bypass the technical manuals, and ignore helpful advice? Culling's search for the answers was in its own way revolutionary.
If we talk to people without giving them a warning, we felt we'd get more information because they'd be freer to discuss it. If we gave them a formal caution, as it were, we thought that they would dry up.
Coffee?
Yes, please.
Great. How was the journey in?
Oh, well, usual stuff.
They decide to talk to the engineer well away from the hangar in a cozy hotel room.
Well, thanks for coming in.
To gain insight into the methods of the maintenance engineers, Culling then does something no one had done before. He brings in a behavioral psychologist.
Is the aircraft normally in the hangar when you're doing that?
Psychologists had been used before to analyze why pilots make mistakes under pressure. It's a discipline called human factors. But in 1990, using human factors in engineering was unheard of.
I wanted a professional slant on what is really psychological territory. I would hope that as far as the shift maintenance manager was concerned, that it gave him extra confidence that we were trying to be even-handed and that we were trying to get to the bottom of it.
You know, the parts catalogue. When you're getting the bolts out, do you go straight to the parts catalogue, or do you just sort of...
Not usually.
Right.
No, if I've got a set of screws and there's the same screws, I just go get them out of the carousels.
Right. You find it's easier to do it visually? It was, in that case, easier to do it visually from the bolts you take now?
Yeah, because they're the same bolts that come out, the same ones go back in, so same size bolts, there's no difference.
And if it worked before, it must be the right bolts?
Yeah, it's just replacing like with like, really.
Yeah, because it had been flying.
We were somewhat horrified that they had admitted those things to us, because after all, we were officially, in inverted commas, and they were quite proud of them. We would have thought that had they used such practices, they would have kept very quiet about it.
If I'd had to go check with the computers what bolts I needed and what parts and how to fit the thing, then there was a good chance it wouldn't have been flying at the time it was meant to be.
Good, good. So, when you're doing the job now, you're an experienced engineer, it might not be by the book all the time, like you would train somebody who was new.
No, not usually. We've been doing these things for years.
Culling was stunned by what he was hearing, but there were more revelations to come. The engineer's dangerous approach was becoming clearer by the minute.
You trusted your own knowledge better than the store supervisor's knowledge?
Well, I'm an engineer. I got 7D bolts out, so I put 7D bolts back in. That's, well, you know, no problem with that. It's that simple.
So you trusted that the aircraft had been flying, so therefore they must have been the right bolts?
Yeah, that aircraft had done lots of hours with that windscreen.
Their whole aim was to expedite work through their station. They had a lot of work coming. It was all done at night, and in many cases they had more work than they could reasonably handle. And they had devised little stratagems to get round that.
Culling and the psychologist's insights made their way into the first draft of the report. It said that there were systemic faults in the maintenance procedure in Birmingham. But under pressure from British Airways lawyers, and because they hadn't carried out their investigation following normal procedure, the final report was forced to change its emphasis.
By our, I mean the Treasury solicitor or whoever was advising the branch, confirmed that under natural law it was unfair to use that information because we hadn't gone through the whole procedure. And so we had to remove that from the report.
The investigators had never produced an accident report like it. Working with the psychologist, Culling developed a completely novel way of using human factors to explain why this accident happened. They uncovered pressures in the hangar that caused an otherwise proficient engineer to make potentially lethal mistakes whilst being certain he was doing the right thing. This psychological approach took air accident prevention to a new level. Through the sheer skill of the crew of BA 5390, as well as a small measure of luck, 87 people are now still alive. As a consequence of this investigation, others may never have to go through the same ordeal. In the aftermath of the accident, the crew were treated as heroes. They received numerous awards, and Alistair Acheson received the coveted gold medal for airmanship. Their colleagues also showed what they felt.
One of the most moving things was to go back to Birmingham. As we walked into the airport, the whole of the airport stopped. And all the ground staff and all the check-in girls and all that just stood and applauded as we walked through the building, and it was really quite, you know, moving at the time. You sort of wanted to get out of the way so that you could sort of, you know, I don't really want to do this. It's like walking up the red carpet sort of thing.
Their colleagues were applauding a team which had demonstrated the highest form of professionalism at every level. A cabin crew which worked as a team in extraordinary circumstances, and the co-pilot, an outsider who took control and worked alone to bring them all safely down to earth. Each of the crew dealt with their experience in different ways. Tim Lancaster began flying again with BA just 5 months after the accident. He's retired from BA, but loves flying so much he's now with another airline.
You cannot say that, until she'll shoot you.
It was a special day when the first day I flew. I decided, you know, that was what I was going to do. I was going to make an effort to go back to work and get better. So having made the decision, the rest was easy.
For Nigel, the man who ran to Tim's aid and held on to him for dear life, the impact of that day was far more profound.
I think about it every day. And that is the truth. I think about it every single day. In one form or another, yeah. Every single day. it'll affect me till the end of my days.
Nigel, along with Simon and Sue, no longer fly. But John Heward is still with British Airways as a chief steward. But even he isn't free of the memories of that day.
They were bringing in another British aerospace aeroplane to where I worked in Birmingham, and unfortunately that window was fitted from the outside, and the layout of the cabin was identical. And when I sat on it, it all came back to you. But for that reason, I've gone back to work at Heathrow and fly long-haul flights again, because those aeroplanes have got no resemblance to the 111 at all.
Alistair Atchison, who is still flying for British Airways, chose not to take part in this film. For each of the crew, the experience will stay with them in different ways. But common to them all is that on that day, their numbers did not come up.
Tim explained it very well, actually. And he said our names were on the page, but we weren't at the top. And I think that was, you know, probably true.
We are in an emergency.
It was just a small commuter plane, buzzing back and forth from one town to another. A journey of 86 minutes, one of many that day. No one could ever have imagined that it would end like this, in drama and in death. Yet in 1995, two pilots with 26 passengers aboard managed to defy the laws of gravity for 9 minutes and 20 seconds, when their aircraft in effect lost the use of a wing, struggling home like a wounded bird.
Help me hold it!
Brace positions! Keep your heads down, everyone! Hold on, this is gonna be rough!
But when their plane makes a miraculous crash landing with all passengers alive, their ordeal isn't over. What awaits them is even more horrifying.
It's getting hot in here! Get me out! Tell my wife I love her!
I have never before or since dealt with so much physical devastation and emotional upheaval and so much sorrow.
Flying isn't always glamorous. Regional airlines are like the buses of the air, trundling back and forth from one small city to another. Crews operate several flights a day, working for up to 15 hours. They face interminable ground delays and often surly passengers. If a flight gets cancelled, they don't get paid, but they enjoy their work. Atlanta Airport in Georgia has become one of the busiest in the world. It's the home of a very successful regional airline, Atlantic Southeast. ASA serves every town and city of the southeastern United States with a fleet of 83 turboprops. In 1995, most of them were Brasilias built by the Brazilian firm Embraer. The Brasilia is a high-performance aircraft with state-of-the-art avionics and a top speed of 378 miles per hour. Today, after 18,000 successful flights, this Brasilia will take off for the last time.
Takeoff check, below the line. I've got your lights.
Captain Ed Ganaway and First Officer Matt Warmerdam have just flown in from Macon, Georgia.
Internal lights on.
Going through the departure checklist, they're now ready for their second flight of the day, Flight ASA 529 to Gulfport, Mississippi.
Hi. Hi, honey. Hi there. Okay.
Flight attendant Robin Feck has been with ASA for just over 2 years.
Hi there.
Her cabin is a cramped space, only 31 feet long. Most of her 26 passengers are seasoned business travelers, ranging in age from 18 to 69. Among them are 6 engineers, 2 deputy sheriffs, a minister, 2 Air Force personnel, and even an aspiring flight attendant. For them, the short trip to Gulfport, Mississippi is a routine journey. But they're half an hour late on their schedule already.
Okay, power's set. Auto feathers armed. Panels clear.
Captain Ed Ganaway, who's been with ASA for 7 years, comes from a family of pilots. He's a skilled and accomplished captain.
V1. VR. Pause rate. Gear up.
AC 529, contact departure, fly heading 060 now. We'll see you.
The 2 men have only been flying together for 4 months, but get along well. At 6'3" and 200 pounds, Matt Warmerdam is a tight fit in the Brazilia's cramped cockpit.
I think all pilots would agree that the Brasilia was a constant love-hate relationship. It was, at the time, the fastest, sleekest turboprop around. And it was also very tricky to master. The thing was built like a Sherman tank.
Hey, Robin?
Hi.
It'll just be a couple more minutes like this. It's gonna smooth out.
Okay, just a couple more minutes and I'll be able to get up?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
See you.
David McCorkill is a frequent flyer and works in the software business. He's on his way to an important meeting.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard.
Atlantic Southeast Airlines, Flight 529, service to Gulfport, Mississippi. We're passing through 13,000 feet. The captain has turned off the fasten seatbelt signs. However, if you are in your seats, we suggest that you do so with your seatbelt loosely around your waist, just in case we encounter any turbulence en route.
Chuck Pfisterer, a nervous flyer, works for a paper company and is on his way to visit a new mill.
AC 529, climb and maintain flight level 200.
200, AC 529. 20.
The Brasilia, on autopilot, is climbing towards its cruising altitude of 24,000 feet.
24. 24.
But the plane will never make it to this altitude.
Autopilot, engine control, oil.
The sound of that was tremendous. It was as if someone had taken a baseball bat and hit an aluminum garbage can as hard as they could. It was just a gigantic crashing sound. And the airplane immediately lurched to the left.
I heard a loud bang, and that's what, just shot me awake. Not knowing really what happened, I looked over and noticed everyone looking left out the window.
What I saw was very alarming. The outer skin of the engine had been ripped off, or as I determined later, had peeled back because of some force. I could see the components of the engine itself, and I could see fluid leaving the engine and exiting the back of the wing.
Autopilot.
Warning lights and chimes go off, signaling trouble in the left engine. The autopilot trips off as a result, and Ganaway takes control of the plane.
Autopilot, engine control, oil.
The plane is falling 5,500 feet a minute, the equivalent of over 90 feet every second. Oil from the destroyed engine is seeping into the air conditioning pack, bringing smoke into the cabin.
Autopilot, engine control, oil.
Back off.
Autopilot.
We've got the left engine out. Left power lever.
Autopilot.
Flight idle.
Oil.
Unaware that the left engine is destroyed, the pilot tries to adjust its propeller to improve the plane's lift.
Left condition lever, feather.
Warmerdam attempts to feather the propeller, which means changing the angle of the blades in order to minimize air resistance. The warning light indicates fire in the left engine.
Left condition lever, fuel shut off.
No matter what Ganaway does, the plane is still pulling violently to the left. He struggles to counteract it by pushing hard to the right, using both rudder and control column.
I need some help here. I need some help on this.
The force of the crippled wing pulling to the left is relentless. Without the efforts of the pilots to keep the plane stable, it would roll into a spin and spiral down into the ground, killing everyone on board. The engine has turned into a mass of misshapen, twisted metal, fatally weakening the wing's aerodynamic capabilities and dragging it down. The plane wants to keep turning left. The pilots must push hard right on the rudder to the limit to keep them flying straight. Captain Ganaway is confused. Feathering the propeller has not reduced the drag. He's so preoccupied with handling the emergency, he hasn't looked over his shoulder at the damaged engine yet.
You said it's feathered?
Did feather?
What the hell is wrong with this thing?
I don't know.
For now, the pilots are focused on the plane's vital statistics: heading, altitude, speed, and the power setting of its one good engine.
Well, these planes were designed to fly with one engine.
The airplane is capable of flying on one engine. However, in the case of 529, not only do you have an engine that has malfunctioned and stopped running, but now it is broken from its normal mounted position and canted, which creates a very increased or dramatic aerodynamic effect on the airplane.
Let's close these. Oh, sir, you don't need to be looking at that.
My reaction was, the hell with you. If I want to look out the window, I'm going to look out the window because these are the last moments of my life.
Whoa, it's all right. That's just what turbulence feels like with one engine.
Are we gonna make it?
Oh, sir, of course we're gonna make it.
How can the plane fly like that?
Well, these planes were designed to fly with only one engine.
We're not gonna make it.
What was important wasn't the conversation between the two of us. I think that it was what was in our eyes. I think that she knew that I knew that this was a huge problem and that it probably wasn't going to be something that was going to end without tragedy.
The pilots have managed to slow the plane's catastrophic rate of descent, but not halt it. In fact, the airspeed has actually increased to 224 miles per hour. Captain Ganaway is puzzled. He's flown a Brasilia on one engine before and landed it without difficulty. This plane has something very wrong.
Atlanta Center.
AC-529 declaring an emergency. We've had an engine failure.
We're out of 14-2 at this time.
AC-529, roger. Left turn direct Atlanta.
Flight 529, now flying over Alabama, makes a left turn back towards Atlanta. But the airport is almost 58 miles away. Will they make it? The plane has begun to descend again and at breakneck speed. Warmerdam cancels the master caution warning, finally silencing the plane's alarms. Captain Ganaway experiments with his controls, trying everything. Suddenly, the nose of the Brasilia lifts up, and the plane's speed slows to 186 miles per hour.
AC-529, say altitude descending to?
We're out of 11,600 at this time. AC-529.
All right, it's getting more controllable here. The engine. Let's watch our speed.
For the first time since the crisis began, the pilots can now turn their attention to the passengers.
Trim completely here. I'm gonna tell Rob what's going on.
Hi.
Okay, we had an engine failure, Robin. We declared an emergency. We're diverting back to Atlanta. Go ahead and brief the passengers.
This will be an emergency landing back in.
All right, thank you.
Feck hasn't told the pilots what she's seen of the destroyed engine. She assumes they already know.
AC-529, can you level off or do you need to keep descending?
The plane is descending again at about 3,000 feet a minute. Ganaway suddenly realizes they won't make it to Atlanta.
We're gonna need to keep descending.
We need an airport quick. Okay, we're gonna need to keep
Descending. We need an airport quick.
roll the trucks and everything out for us.
AC 529, West Georgia.
The regional airport is at your 10 o'clock position and about 10 miles away.
But the air traffic controller, too preoccupied with handling the crisis aboard Flight 529, fails to notify emergency services. Flight 529 makes another wide left turn that brings it on course to land at West Georgia Regional Airport.
Let's get out the engine failure checklist, please.
Engine failure in flight.
But they don't get a chance to diagnose their problem.
AC 529, say heading.
Turning to about 310 right now.
AC 529, Roger, you need to be on a 030 for West Georgia Regional, sir.
Roger, we'll probably turn right.
We're having difficulty controlling right now.
Let me see your brace positions. Brace position. Good. Good. Ma'am, will you accept responsibility for opening the door when the plane stops? No, okay.
APU, if available, start. You want me to start it?
We gotta bring this thing down. Put that off. Bring the ice off.
Caution. Caution.
AC 529.
Say your altitude now, sir.
Out of 7,000, AC 529.
Trim, fail. Trim, fail.
Oh, good start.
AC 529, I missed that, I'm sorry.
We're at a 6.9 right now.
AC 529. Okay, it's up and running it.
All right, go ahead.
Caution.
AC 529.
West Georgia Regional is your closest airport.
What kind of runway they got?
Yeah, what kind of runways?
West Georgia Regional got?
West Georgia Regional is... It's 5,000 feet. And is asphalt, sir.
Okay, now I want you to remove any pens or sharp objects from your pockets. I want you to take off your glasses and pour any drinks into the pocket of the seat in front of you.
We had to put the drinks in our pocket in front of us. I think that shook a few of us. And I kind of noticed it wasn't going too well, but most folks on that flight were business folks that flew real frequent. So, you know, there was no screaming or panicking of any sort.
Based on the fact that I was going to die, I dealt with it in the best way that I could, which was just to try to absorb it, accept it, and deal with it.
Okay, Mom, practice. Take your seatbelt off and on, okay? That's it. Okay, if there's smoke and the door in front of us is blocked, you gotta get down on your hands and knees and crawl to the back, okay? So count the rows. We gotta get out of the 5th row.
The plane is still losing altitude far too quickly. Can it make it to the airport in time? Atlanta Center normally only controls flights at altitudes over 11,000 feet. For the last 7 minutes, Flight 529 had been under this altitude, and now the controller is having trouble locating them.
AC 529, I've lost your transponder. Say altitude.
We're at a 4.5 at this time.
AC 529, I've got you now, and the airport's at your... Say you're heading now, sir?
We are heading 080.
Roger, you need about 10 degrees left.
West Georgia Regional Airport is only 8 miles away, beneath the clouds. 2 minutes flying time, but they're not sure they can keep airborne that long.
I'll tell you what,
Let me put you on approach. He works that airport and we'll be able to give you more information. Contact Atlanta Approach at 12.0.
Atlanta Approach Air Traffic Control. It monitors planes within a much smaller airspace, including West Georgia Regional Airport. The Brasilia, now at 3,400 feet, has slowed its descent to 1,800 feet per minute, but that's still too fast. They won't make it to the airport. On some passengers' faces, looks of despair. Others are angry and bitter, but most are thinking about their loved ones. One woman writes a goodbye note to her children on a torn book cover. She writes, "I love you, You are the lights of my life. Always, Mommy.
I think we should pray.
7 minutes have passed. For the first time, Captain Ganaway manages to catch a glimpse of the left engine.
The engine's exploded. It's just hanging out there.
This was something his instruments hadn't told him. It's no simple engine failure. The engine is just dangling off the wing. He knows he could land a Brasilia with a failed engine, but not when it's torn apart. This is something his training hasn't prepared him for. He wishes he could see through the clouds.
Atlanta approach, AC 529.
AC 529. Atlanta approach here.
Yes, sir, we're with you, declaring an emergency.
AC 529, roger. Expect localizer runway 34 approach. And could you fly heading 180? 160. Localizer frequency.
The controller's flight path will take the Brasilia several miles south before landing. Ganaway knows he doesn't have the extra minutes that this will take.
We can get it in on a visual. Just give us the vectors, we'll go the visual.
He asks for directions to take the plane straight in using the shortest possible route. Suddenly, they're out of the clouds, but the sight that greets them couldn't be worse. In front of them, no airport, only forest and villages. Captain Ganaway, who never stutters, does now.
Single engine checklist, please. Where the hell is it?
Robin Feck is puzzled. 6 minutes earlier, Warmerdam had told her the plane was turning back to Atlanta. But all she can see now is Georgia countryside.
Word of 1900 at this time?
We're below the clouds, tell them.
You're out at 1900 now?
Yeah, we're VFR at this time. Could you give us a vector to the airport?
Turn left. Fly heading 040. Bear, the airport's at your about 10 o'clock and 6 miles, sir. Radar contact lost at this time.
The plane's low altitude shocks the controller. 1,900 feet. Only a minute earlier, it had been at 3,400 feet. The descent is far too fast.
Remember, brace yourselves. And once we get out to where we're going, wait till the plane comes to a complete stop before we can get out. Okay, brace positions, please. Brace positions. Sir, heads down, please.
Robin Feck, too preoccupied by the safety of her passengers, looks out of a window and suddenly sees the tops of the trees. She has but a few seconds left to strap herself in her jump seat before impact.
Brace positions. Keep your heads down, everyone. Hold on, this is gonna be rough.
The airport is only 4 miles away, but too far for the crippled plane. The pilots have to attempt a crash landing in a field.
Help me hold it.
Over there.
Help me hold it, help me hold it.
Here, 500. Here, 500.
The plane's altitude voice alarm sounds, warning the pilots that they're flying too close to the ground without their landing gear lowered.
Fucking land the plane!
The pilots will attempt to land on the plane's belly.
100. Here, 100.
Help me hold it, help me hold it!
Here, 100.
Amy, I love you.
These are the last words on the cockpit voice recorder. The plane is flying at 138 miles per hour and only seconds away from impact.
50. Here, 40. Here, 30. Here, 20. Here.
The plane had landed in a small field in Burwell, a sleepy farming community near Carrollton, Georgia, where nothing major ever happens. Many neighbors witnessed the plane coming down. Bill Jetters and his wife lived in this house at the end of this field, angled directly in the plane's path.
My wife was sitting at the kitchen table reading, and she said, "Bill, we better get out of here because the plane's going to hit the house." So about that time it started stopping. I said, "Well, you call 911 and I'm going to see if I can help at the plane."
Emergency? Yes, we have a plane crashed in our backyard. A plane crashed? Yes, somebody out here currently.
8 minutes had passed since First Officer Warmerdam had declared an emergency and asked Atlanta Center for rescue vehicles to be alerted. But the controller hadn't passed on the message. Minutes would make the difference now between life and death. The local emergency services responded quickly, but were still many miles away. For almost a minute after impact, there's an eerie silence. The plane fuselage is broken in two. Could anyone survive? As the dust settles, all 29 people on board are miraculously alive, with only a handful seriously injured by the impact.
It was an amazing situation only because I just couldn't even believe that I was alive at that point, and I couldn't believe that I was looking at something that was real.
But a new disaster is gathering. Fuel from the shattered wing tanks is pouring onto the ground.
The last thing I remember is the sound of hitting the trees, and then I honestly don't recall impact.
Captain Ed Ganaway has been knocked unconscious by a blow to the head during the impacts. When First Officer Matt Warmerdam regains consciousness, he realizes they're stuck. The cockpit door is jammed, and smoke is slowly seeping in. He reaches for the emergency crash axe. The cockpit window is the only way out.
The next immediate thought I had was, now we're going to blow up. So get out of there. It was burning, right in the opening. So I just jumped over.
And I headed towards the opening, and I walked out of the aircraft, and I walked away from it.
The sparks ignite the fuel vapors, creating a blazing fire. Within seconds, the fire spreads to the fuselage. In the rear section of the plane, the passengers are now trapped by flames burning at 1800 degrees centigrade. They can hear screams from the field outside, where some passengers are already suffering from terrible burns. To escape, they too have to run through the fire, not fall in it, hoping for the best.
I turned back and I looked at the aircraft, and what I saw was that the opening that I had come through was basically fully engulfed in flames, and that the people that were exiting the aircraft were all on fire.
Some of them would, roll in the grass to try and put the fire out, and sometimes that made it worse because there was spent or spilt fuel, and then they would get even more ignited.
And the whole situation got uglier and uglier in the sense that you would all of a sudden see people with their clothing burned off. You would see people with red skin that you could see was burnt. You could actually see some people whose flesh was like dropping off of their bodies or their faces. It was just a horrible situation that was taking place, and it was getting worse and worse.
Matt Warmerdam, his right shoulder dislocated, is banging the axe against the window with his left hand.
person's clothes were on fire, and she was on the ground. I think it was a woman. She was on the ground, and Robin said to me, she says, take off your shirt, take off your pants, try to beat the flames out. And I did that.
One gentleman I saw was crawling, completely engulfed in flames, and another one that was, most of his clothes was torn off. Now, whether they got torn off in the crash or he tore them off himself, I don't know. I helped him away from the airplane and brought him up towards my brother-in-law's house. And all he had on was his shorts, and his skin was, excuse me.
Well, being a paralyzed person myself, I knew that I couldn't do much for them. I was looking and I thought to myself, that'll be these people that are on that airplane are seeing the last seconds of a normal life that they'll ever live.
Aircraft glass is much thicker than what you would see on like an automobile windshield. It's several different composite layers that have been temper treated together to make it a very, very tough surface. And with each swing of the crash axe, I was only able to chip away a small piece of glass.
I need some help!
I really did feel kind of alone there. I'm looking around left and right, and there's no other fools that close, you know, at that second.
But even though passenger David McCorkle believes that the plane might blow up at any second, he goes to Matt Warmerdam's rescue.
Can you help me? I haven't got enough room inside to swing it. Where should I hit? In here. Hang on a second, hang on, I gotta get some air.
The oxygen cylinder in the closet behind the co-pilot's seat punctures. It'll make the cockpit fire much worse.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay. Stop a second. Let me see if I can squeeze out. Let's get you out of here. Stop pulling me. No, it's too small. Go ahead.
By now, the rescue crews of the area have been notified. Firemen, police officers, paramedics, all are hurriedly on their way to the crash site. Will the fire trucks arrive in time to save Matt Warmerdam before the cockpit gets engulfed in flames? David McCorkle is exhausted trying to break the strong glass. Suddenly, a heat flame pops at him from below the cockpit. He backs off, scared for his life.
You aren't gonna let me die, are you?
He has children, and he must think of them as well. How can he sacrifice his life for a man he does not know? Now more determined than ever, he bangs even harder and faster. Then suddenly, the weakened axe head flies off.
It's getting hot in here! Get me out!
Guy Pope, a police officer, is the first rescue worker to reach the burning plane.
I was about 3 miles from here when I received the call. And about halfway here, I could see the smoke, pretty heavy smoke. And I got out of the car and I ran up to the plane. And when I went around the nose of the plane, one of the passengers handed me a hatchet and said that the pilot was inside. And I took the hatchet and started trying to cut a bigger hole. I couldn't get around behind the cockpit because of fire. It was still burning pretty heavy, and there was an oxygen bottle there blowing the fire. And, you know, it's just one of them things. You see a man burn, you don't forget it.
This is live footage taken with a video from the windshield of a Georgia State Patrol police car as rescue workers are arriving at the site. At this moment, all passengers are out of the two sections of the broken plane, except pilots Ed Ganaway and Matt Warmerdam, who remain prisoners of their cockpit.
Well, first off, I had to tear the back of the cockpit out. It had burnt and there was no door, visible door or anything like that, so I actually took my hands and tore it out. When I started to pull him out, he looked up and he said, "Tell my wife, Amy, that I love her." I said, "No, sir, you tell her that you love her, because I'm getting you out of here."
Inside the ambulance, I worked with him, and I thought that probably he would not make it. I took his name badge and pinned it on his underwear, which was the only thing I'd left on him, trying to cool him down, because I thought that if he died, at least someone would know who he was. Surprisingly, Matt was aware of everything around him, and he kept trying to assure me that things were going to be okay. He was comforting me, because at that particular time I was crying. Matthew actually took his burned hand and wiped a tear away.
They found Captain Ganaway dead in the cockpit. He had struck his head on impact and never regained consciousness. He died of burns and smoke inhalation. The crash survivors, some with broken bones and others with burns ranging from minor to 92%, are rushed to various hospitals in Georgia. 13 passengers were brought to Tanner Hospital in Carrollton, 15 minutes away, where Code Black was immediately applied, meaning everybody helps. Dr. Bobby Mitchell, after working a night shift, was awakened. He was responsible for treating 4 survivors, including flight attendant Robin Feck.
When I got to the hospital, some of the people that had survived the plane crash were already here. The smell was initially just a wave of jet fuel that just hit you as the door opened, and then that was mixed with just a pungent, horrible odor of burned flesh. Miss Feck, she had a cut on her scalp and a couple of broken bones, like a collarbone and an arm, and she was in a great deal of pain herself, although she didn't particularly want me to be dealing with her. She said, "You get back with them," and the orthopedist soon took over her care. She was clearly still trying to care for her passengers. When a patient suffers a severe burn, the skin is violated, and the skin really is the major part of your immune system. So people that have been horribly burned, that initial defense is violated, and infectious organisms harmful to the body can very easily get in, and your immune system can just handle so much. When they are able to survive for a period of weeks, it is not uncommon for them to die from other organ failure, which is what happened to a lot of the people that were on Flight 529. I have never before or since dealt with so much physical devastation and emotional upheaval and so much sorrow and horror and sadness in one place at one time than we did on that day in this little small town hospital.
After a long day treating the horribly burned passengers and witnessing the courage of some of them, Dr. Mitchell was asked to assist the autopsy on Captain Ed Ganaway.
I looked down at him and kind of put my hand over on, I told everybody, I hope wherever his spirit is that he knows what a good job he did. And I just said, you know, you're the hero. I hope you know it, Captain Ganaway.
Regional airlines are a North American phenomenon. In the early 1960s, a small band of independent airlines first became known as air taxis, which in time became commuter airlines, then finally regional airlines. In 1978, the US deregulated the airlines, and as the small and mid-sized cities became the economic engine of the country, regional airlines prospered as never before. The National Transportation Safety Board in the United States is responsible for investigating air disasters. Its GO team is on duty 24 hours a day to fly to the scene of any major crash. The NTSB will have several subgroups working at the same time, each examining a particular part of the plane. Gordon Jim Hookey, an aerospace engineer, was in charge of the propeller maintenance group.
We went out to the crash site, and in the usual fashion, you just kind of look around and get a feel for where all the pieces are. We came along the propeller assembly that was missing. Looking down through the dirt, we could see the telltale marks, the beach marks along the fracture surface that indicated it might have been a fatigue fracture.
During the last 10 minutes of Flight 529, no one on board the plane suspected that the engine failure had been caused by a propeller blade fracture. Hookey had good reason to be concerned by the broken propeller blade. He'd seen it all before. 4 years earlier, another ASA Brasilia had nosedived and crashed in woods in Georgia, killing all 23 people aboard, including former US Senator John Tower of Texas and Space Shuttle astronaut Manly Sonny Carter. The NTSB's investigation of that incident had found the crash had been caused by a badly designed propeller control unit, and they blamed the manufacturer, Hamilton Standard. Then in March 1994, just 17 months before ASA 529, on 2 separate commercial flights, identical propeller blades broke from metal fatigue over Canada and over Brazil. In both cases, the aircraft involved managed to land safely. These accidents pointed to serious problems in Hamilton Standard propellers and became a major crisis for the company. Airlines were ordered by the government to carry out an inspection of all the 15,000 propeller blades in service. Investigators found that the broken propeller had been declared suspect and sent back to Hamilton Standard for inspection.
When the ASA mechanics took the blade off the hub, as soon as they turned it over, we marked down the serial number. So when we went back to do the records, we could immediately go to that particular blade.
Investigator Jim Hookey took the broken blade stub to Atlanta Airport. From there, it was sent to the NTSB laboratory in Washington. By next morning, blade number 861398 was being examined under a scanning microscope. Investigators found telltale deposits of chlorine, a corrosive substance known to eat into the inner walls of the propeller blade.
So then the question becomes, where did the chlorine come from?
In 2 of the previous propeller failures, the problem had also been traced to corrosion caused by chlorine in the inner wall of the blade. Flight 529's blade had also snapped off 13.2 inches from the hub, very similar to the 2 previous blade failures. Under the microscope, NTSB scientists saw that 2 cracks along the inner wall of the blade had joined to form a single fissure. This had grown and grown until it circled the blade, at which point it snapped under the stress of normal operation. But the NTSB scientists noted something else. On the inner surface, extending about 1.5 inches from the fracture, there was a series of sanding marks. Hookey set off to Hamilton Standard, intent on getting the maintenance records for the propellers. What had been done to the blade when it had been recalled? At the factory, Hookey examined the blade's repair reports. He noted the initials of the technician who did the work, CSB, Christopher Scott Bender. He was a young technician who worked at a Hamilton Standard propeller repair facility. Christopher Bender had watched the news of the accident on television, little realizing how he was involved in the accident.
I saw the Hamilton Standard prop on it, and I was like, I hope this is not a prop failure. It was just kind of the back of my mind, and that morning they were like, you know, the NTSB is down there, FAA is investigating, and they've called in some of our engineers to go also down there, and it might be a prop failure. And as soon as I heard that, my heart just sank. I was like, you know, I think I might have even cried a little bit, because I was just, you know, just emotionally overwhelmed that, you know, something I had put my hands on, a procedure that somebody trusted me to do failed. And because that somebody had died.
After discovering the technician who had last worked on the propeller blade that caused the crash of ASA 529, the NTSB now had to find out how the blade had passed inspection. Propeller blades are hollow. Inside, weights are inserted to balance the prop. They're kept in place by a cork soaked in chlorine. It was the chlorine that had caused the corrosion in the previous accidents. However, on this blade, Bender had been unable to detect any evidence of corrosion. He then did what he'd been told to do, polish the inside of the blade.
The draft accident report we present to you today involves Atlantic Southeast Airlines Flight 529.
The NTSB found that by polishing the blade, Hamilton Standard had unwittingly removed all traces of the crack, and a later, more thorough ultrasound examination couldn't detect it. The NTSB asked for more accountability for management at Hamilton Standard. And so the final report read, The fracture was caused by a fatigue crack from multiple corrosion pits that were not discovered by Hamilton standard because of inadequate and ineffective corporate inspection and repair techniques, training, documentation, and communications. Some final questions still needed to be answered. Why had the broken propeller blade destroyed the engine? In previous incidents, the entire propeller had fallen away harmlessly. But on Flight 529, blade loss unbalanced the propeller and led to uncontrollable high-speed shaking as the engine shuddered in its mountings. This was the ominous hammering sound heard by the passengers. It literally ripped the engine open and left the useless propeller jammed against the wing.
The flight crew weren't handling the engine failure as a true engine failure in that some mechanical malfunction occurred and the engine stopped running. They didn't know that the engine actually had vibrated significantly and broken from its mount and actually canted or twisted on the wing.
The NTSB found that the rescue services might have arrived more quickly if controllers had heeded Matt Warmerdam's request for help on the ground, given by radio 6.5 minutes before the crash. Another key NTSB recommendation was to replace the flimsy crash axe that had failed in Warmerdam's rescue with a sturdier model. Investigators praised the crew of Flight 529 for the way they dealt with the crisis, calling their reactions reasonable and appropriate. But the board could offer little advice on the one thing that had caused all these deaths: fire. The conundrum is, how do you make a fuel burn in an engine but not ignite when it's spilled? One way to reduce the severity of post-crash fires is by utilizing less flammable fuel. In 1984, the Federal Aviation Administration and NASA decided to test a new, safer fuel by staging an accident using a remote-controlled plane. Unfortunately, it was not a conspicuous success. But the US Navy has been using a safer form of jet fuel called JP5 since the 1950s, yet it's not used in commercial aviation.
The primary reason that civilian sector or commercial aviation has not gone to a lower flammability fuel is a question of availability and distribution and the cost. It costs more to produce a JP5.
Everything comes down to money. What's it going to cost to develop a system? What's it going to cost to implement the system? What's it going to do for the overall safety of the airplane, and who's going to pay for it? Personally, from a safety standpoint, I'll pay $2 extra in my ticket to know and to have that security.
Until a solution is found, there will continue to be stories like ASA 529. On impact, everyone on this flight had survived, but the subsequent fire became the killer. For the victims of the fire, recovery has been a slow, painful, and excruciating process. First Officer Matt Warmerdam was burned on 42% of his body. Some other survivors suffered up to 90% burns. Treatment included daily baths and removal of dead skin from burn wounds. There would be years of skin graft operations, the 24-hour-a-day wearing of pressure garments to minimize scarring, chronic itching and soreness, and daily physical therapy.
Your ability to sense and feel through those areas is permanently changed for the worse. Temperature control is lost. When you walk from an air-conditioned building into the outside, you take for granted that your body starts accommodating that either by sweating or redirecting blood flow. People with burns, especially horrible, large surface area burns, that's lost forever. They have to plan everything they do. They have to plan where they're going to be and the clothing much more carefully. So there are emotional and physical things both that are lost forever.
My medical treatments were quite extensive. I think I honestly have lost count how many surgeries I had to go through to get back to the point where I could fly again, but it's got to be somewhere near 50, including all the skin grafting things that they had to do in the hospital and as such. Psychologically was tough in the beginning. There I was, happy to be finally starting my career as I had dreamed it from my childhood, and it was suddenly ripped away. And that was tough. There was a lot of long nights talking with Amy, trying to get over the pain and despair of all that.
I did have trouble getting my life back in order. It caused me to drink more than I had before.
I think the plane crash, it just took the last bite. And I stayed in the fire service for a while after that, but my heart was never in it again.
I quit my job as I was a vice president of a software company, traveling a lot, making very good money. And I went to work as a buyer in Alaska. I also reconnected with my ex-wife, and we got remarried, moved down to South Carolina, and had all our kids move in with us. So, yeah, I did change my life.
It helped me to kind of put a lot of things in perspective, including not only how I acted myself, but also how I treated other people.
1 year after the crash, the Military Fraternal Organization of Pilots bestowed its prestigious medallion on Matt Warmerdam for his part in saving the lives of his passengers. He accepted it in honor of the crew. Seeking closure on the trauma of the crash, residents built a memorial to the victims of Flight 529 behind Shiloh United Methodist Church, a short distance from the accident site in Burwell.
You know, I wish this had never happened. I wish I could go back in time and fix it and take care of it, that it didn't happen. You know, I don't know if they believe in God or not, but I pray for them that God comforts them through the hurt that they've had in their lives.
Much has changed for the company that manufactured Flight 529's propeller. Now renamed Hamilton Sundstrand, it's part of the giant United Technologies Aerospace and Defense Group. Flight 529 was the last time that one of its propellers failed in flight. Its inspection and repair process was made more stringent, in some cases exceeding FAA requirements. Since the 3 blade failures, there have been none whatsoever. Of the 29 people aboard ASA Flight 529, only 8 escaped with minor injuries. Of the 21 others who received major injuries and burns, 10 subsequently died. Flight attendant Robin Feck declined to be interviewed for this film. Still suffering from the pain and anguish of that terrible day, she's never worked as a flight attendant again.
The best thing I ever could have done for myself was that day 2 years ago when I'd finished training and took the controls of a ASA plane and flew again. I stubbornly recaptured my dream. And now that I'm doing it again, it's just been a joy. It's what I do. It's what I love. It's what I always wanted to do with my life, and I'm doing it again.